beautiful girl. Thank you so much. Come back. You see the helmet? Please give it to me now. For a safety reason, I'm gonna have to wear the helmet because it is getting dangerous now. Kira, put the money in your pocket. This is London. You don't have a pocket. Give it back to me. Have a seat.
You have your online tickets ready to discount.
Everyone in this queue also has it's nice there, isn't it?
Buildings and places of real character and are being dominated by luxury skyscrapers, office blocks and apartments. A very good example of this, ahead of us here to your right, the large glass structure. That was all developed as part of the redevelopment of the London Bridge Overground station. But this is called the Shard, built to resemble a shard of glass. At 1,019 feet high, it's the tallest building in Western Europe. And it's made up of blocks of offices, a shopping centre, various hotels, bars, restaurants and luxury apartments. Also situated right up on the 77th floor is a viewing gallery. Also to our right, the large brown brick building with a tall chimney in the centre, that's the old Bankside Power Station, which 23 years ago was bought up and converted into the Tate Modern Art Galleries. You can go in there and see such magical exhibits as half a cow in a plastic box, an unmade teenager's bed, a light that flicks itself on and off 24 hours a day. 10 years ago they spent nearly £30,000 on a jar of poo. The building is absolutely free to enter, and after walking around it for about half an hour you do tend to realise why. And as we approach the Millennium Footbridge dominating the skyline to our left, a real work of art, the magnificent dome and golden cross of St Paul's Cathedral. St Paul stands 365 feet high, easily remembered for being a foot for every day of the year. The dome of St Paul's weighs 64,000 tonnes and is the second largest unsupported cathedral dome in the world, the largest being that on St Peter's in the Vatican City of Rome. Then to our right, the white building with the thatched roof on top. That is the first wooden building to be built in the city since the Great Fire of London, the New Globe Playhouse Theatre. It was the life's work and dream of an American actor and director from Boston who went by the name of Sam Wanamaker. He raised the funds and designed the plans for the project, but sadly he died a couple of years before its completion. So his daughter, the actress Zoe Wanamaker, she took over the project, and the Globe, believe it or not, will be 28 years old this November. Now we're just approaching the next stop here, folks, which is Bankside Pier for the Tate Modern, St Paul's and the Globe. We're just going to pick up a couple of additional passengers, and then we'll be continuing down to Butler's Walk, Tower Bridge, and then Greenwich. Thank you. Known as Wren Steps. That's where Sir Christopher Wren used to walk down daily to board the Waterman's vessel of old and then cross over to the construction site of St Paul's Cathedral. They're more commonly known these days as the Southwark Causeway, and there's a royal charter upon those steps on your right saying they can never ever legally be removed. As we pass through the bridge though, ahead of us here to your right, you'll see coming into view a place on the shore where there's quite a few people enjoying themselves. Now there's only one place you'll find like that in London during the summer months, and that is of course a pub. That is the anchor of Bankside, one of the oldest pubs on the banks of the Thames. Parts of that building date back over 400 years. And it was in the original structure where famously Shakespeare and his players used to get changed before going to act out plays in the Old Globe, which once stood somewhere behind the pub in a place called Park Street. And if you don't believe me how old the pub is, take a look to the gold anchor sign at the top of the building. Now if you look very closely to the bottom left-hand corner of the sign, you'll see written in black, it says built 1615, making the pub 409 this year. The next bridge we pass beneath is the Cannon Street Railway Bridge. The first railway crossing to span the complete width of the Thames on your way inward from the sea. But as we pass through it, ahead of the sea to your right, you'll see coming into view the small dock entrance. This is the St Mary Overy dock, and in there you'll see a black ship with some scaffolding around it. Now, have any of you on board ever seen the film The Pirates of the Caribbean? Show of hands. Has anyone seen that film? Yep, good stuff. Well, this ship here on your right-hand side has absolutely nothing to do with that film whatsoever. That is a replica of Sir Francis Drake's old galleon, the Golden Hind. This version of the Hind has circumnavigated the world twice, which is once more than the original, following the exact steps that Drake took under the secret orders of Queen Elizabeth I. She's an exact replica in every way, shape and form, even down to the fact she has the plank from the original ship from when it was called the Pelican. And it officially changed name to the Golden Hind when Sir Francis Drake was knighted downstream on the Queen's stairs at Thames. The next bridge though is the fourth one to span this site, the New London Road Bridge. Now the first bridge that was built here by the Romans way back in AD 43 was said to have fallen down. But it didn't. It was actually pulled down on top of an invading Viking fleet. The second bridge burned down during the Great Fire of London. The third bridge was falling down, so we sold it to our good friends, the Americans. Sold for a fee of £1 million, it was taken down stone by stone, then shipped up across the Atlantic to where it now spans the man-made lake, Lake Havasu, in the Arizona desert. The man who actually built the bridge, Robert McCulloch, of the McCulloch Company of America, he thought he was buying the Tower Road Bridge. And they do say you should have seen the look in his face when he opened up the box on the other side. Ahead of us to your left though, you'll see a yellow brick building. This is one of the oldest buildings anywhere in the city. It is the original Billingsgate Fish Market. There was a fish market famously registered on that site for over 1,000 years, until sadly, a few years ago in the 80s, the tradition was broken and the fish market was moved further downriver to larger premises in the Docklands area. But from one of London's oldest buildings, we'll now go to another of London's newest. If you look behind that to your left, you'll see this weird shaped building. It gets wider as it gets taller. That's been nicknamed the Walkie-Talkie. It actually hasn't even got a name. It's just known as number 20 Fenchurch Street. But as is commonplace of all the glass buildings here in London today, it's got a viewing gallery at the top. You see that large open glass space? There's a few people walking around the balcony. That's their viewing gallery, and it's a bit different to the others. This one's called the Sky Garden of London. It's an indoor botanical garden made up of a couple of bars and a couple of restaurants. And believe it or not, unlike most things in the world today, it's absolutely free to go up. Absolutely free. All you need to do is book online in advance at theskygarden.london. But here's another tip for you. Directly behind that building is an even taller one. Not the one with the crisscross windows, we call that the cheese grater. But behind that, there's an even taller building. That's called 22 Bishopsgate. And right at the top of that is something called Horizon 22, which is the newest viewing gallery here in London, and that's also free to go. But the difference between that and the Sky Garden, firstly, Horizon 22 is taller. It is in fact the tallest viewing gallery anywhere in London, even taller than the one in the Shard. But also, you don't have to book in advance either. You can just go through the door at the side of the building, queue up for the lift, and go and have a look around. Here to the right-hand side, London's very own warship, C-35, code name for Her Majesty's vessel, HMS Belfast. Belfast was built in the Harland and Wolff shipyard, Northern Ireland, in 1938, and is the same shipyard as the ill-fated Titanic was built. Later commissioned in 1939, she saw many theatres of war. She took part in the D-Day landings at Normandy, the North Atlantic convoys at the Battle of the Atlantic, and also the chasing, shelling and eventual sinking of the German battleship Scharnhorst. She last fired her guns in anger during the Korean campaign in the 50s. She was then sent to be scrapped by the government and then saved by the Imperial War Museum. The vessel now stands here today permanently and peacefully moored as a floating maritime museum to naval life at sea. Then over to our left, one of the most historical landmarks anywhere in the world, the Tower of London. Started in 1078 by William the Conqueror. He actually started the centrepiece, the main tower with the 4 turrets, which is either called the White Tower or the Norman Keep. Following reigning monarchs added to it, and in its time it's been many things. A palace, a fortress, a royal mint. At one time it was even a royal zoo, but it's mostly remembered for being a prison and a place of execution. Look to the river's wall on your left, you'll see the bricked up archway with the words "Entry to the Traitors' Gate" above it. That is where traitors of nobility who were rowed downriver from the old Westminster Palace, they were taken up through that archway and up onto Tower Hill, Tower Green, where they were later executed, which is more often than not their heads being chopped off. You may have remembered me earlier talking about the original 7 entrances into the London Wall, into the original square mile city. Well, Traitors' Gate was one of them, as was Billingsgate. They were the only 2 entrances into the city from the river. The next bridge ahead of us, though, arguably the most famous and photographed bridge anywhere in the world, known as the gateway to the city, the Tower Road Bridge. Completed in 1894 at the cost of just under £1 million and designed by Sir John Wolfe Barry. He designed it meticulously in the Gothic style to blend in with the Tower of London. It is a twin suspension and bascule bridge, the only one of its kind anywhere in the world, making it quite a feat of modern engineering even for its time. The 2 centre bascules off the bridge, they weigh 1,000 tonnes apiece and can be raised into a fully upright position in just 60 seconds to allow larger vessels in and out of the upper pool of London. In fact, the Tower Road Bridge is the only one in the world to be registered and insured by Lloyd's of London as a ship, because it requires a crew of a captain, engineer and a mate to man the bridge at all times. Very shortly though, we are going to pass through the centre arch of the Tower Road Bridge, and as we do, here to our right hand side is our next scheduled stop, which is Butler's Wall Tower Bridge. Now very importantly, at this point we insist that everybody on board the boat, upstairs and downstairs, please take a seat until the boat is safely moored alongside the pier. This is for your own comfort and of course your own safety, especially if you have small children with you. Please now take a seat and remain seated. Unfortunately, we don't have those little orange seatbelt signs, like they do on the aeroplanes, so you just have to take my word for it. Please now take a seat and remain seated. My colleague will notify you when it is safe to leave your seats and move around the vessel freely once more. While you're sitting, take a look at your tickets, and I'll tell you a bit about them and what they allow you to do. Firstly, anyone on board with tickets for Butler's Wharf Tower Bridge of any kind, single, return, round trip, or if you have a top view ticket, you must leave the boat at this point. This is the end of your journey with us. Once again, anyone on board with tickets for Butler's Wharf, Tower Bridge of any kind. I warn you, I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that aren't really there no more, just stuff that I've learned over the years from my dad and other people that I've worked with. So if I do make I'll start boring into tears, just I'll leave you nice and quiet. Just to remember folks, if you remain on the top deck, you must be seated. Thank you. Now, as we did pass through the central arch of the Tower Road Bridge, we actually left the City of London behind, the square mile city. We've now entered into what was once a very busy commercial port, the Port of London. In recent years, due to gentrification, it's been renamed the Docklands area, and it's become a bit of a playground for Mr. Barrett and all his friends to buy up all the old working wharfs and warehouses and convert them into riverside apartments. For instance, Butler's Wharf on the right, 50 years ago, that was just a set of rat-infested derelict old warehouses that were brought up, refurbished and then converted into these luxury riverside apartments. Now continuing to your right, there is still some history amongst it. You'll see a small dock entrance. That's known as St Saviour's Dock, or Dockhead of Bermondsey. And that leads down onto the River Neckinger, where there's a place called Jacob's Island. That's famously where Charles Dickens lived during the time he wrote his novel Oliver. He was said to have based a lot of the characters in the book amongst people he met and knew during the time he lived there. That's why a lot of the filming and location work for the movie itself was done around that area. And also, do any of you remember the film A Fish Called Wanda? Yes, well that building on the corner of the dock, New Concordia Wharf, that's where John Cleese was famously dangled naked out of the window by Kevin Kline after trying to seduce Jamie Lee Curtis. In contrast to our left though, you'll see these green glass apartments. As you can probably gather, they're not warehouse conversions. They're built on the clear way of the shore, normally on line which tugs and barges used to unload and reload their cargoes. But because they're not warehouse conversions, they're even more expensive. For instance, the last part of the complex, you'll see that round flying saucer-esque part on the top. That's all one penthouse. Even the little tiny part at the top, that's known as roof garden, very posh. That was sold 14 years ago for £6.9 million. So God knows what it's worth in today's climate. Also to your left, by the trees, you'll see there's a slipway that goes up onto the shore. The old sewer now the London docks are stepping here to your left-hand side, all across Robin and Shandor. They were infamously destroyed during the Blitz of London. So over the years, that entrance has been filled in, the last remnants of it, and a slipway to block it off. And the old roads are to south. On the left-hand side of the entrance, we have the stone-shaped garden house outside. That's owned by a lady called Dame Helen Mirren, a very famous English actress. The role on the site is owned by a man called Sir Michael Fulton. He's been known to most people as the phantom of the opera. He's loving that and remember after that. Also to our left on the corner of the point, you'll see a very narrow building with the letter E on the top. This was once known as Execution Dock, the offices to a man by the name of Judge Jeffreys. Judge Jeffreys in his time found pirates and smugglers guilty of treason. And if he was found so, he was subject to a torture method known as the Grace of Wapping, which is where you were chained to the riverbed outside that building and had 4 tides pass over you. And if you were still alive after that, he was found not guilty by an act of God. The last person to be subject to that torture method was in fact Captain William Kidd, the pirate. Then during the change of Parliament in the early 17th century, Judge Jeffreys was found guilty of treason himself, and he was locked in the Tower of London and died 5 months later of alcohol poisoning. But this left traders along the banks of the Thames a bit of a problem, because piracy once again increased. So it was down to a Scottish trio from the East India merchants. Their names were Patrick Calhoun, Robert Peel and John Harrier, that started this little firm here on your left-hand side, the Thames River Police, or what they're known as today is the Metropolitan River Support. They were started at the turn of the 17th century, 50 years before the famous Bow Street Runners, making them the oldest registered police force anywhere in the world. And then one of the gentlemen that formed them, Robert Peel, he went ashore and formed what's known today as the Metropolitan Police. And that's why police officers in this country are historically known as Bobbies, is because they were Robert Peel's men. And of course, Bobby being short for Robert, that's how the nickname came about. But just out of interest, do we still have any of our American cousins with us? Show of hands. Any Americans on board? Yes? Okay, I'll point out a little bit of American history. Into your right, you'll see the spire of a church. That's St Mary's of Rotherhithe. And buried in the crypt of that church is a man by the name of Captain Christopher Jones. He was the captain of the pilgrim ship, the Mayflower. Now, if you continue looking here to your right, just offset from this wooden veranda, where you see the US and Union flags, there's a pub there called the Mayflower Tavern. A lot of the woodwork in that building is made from the original timber frame of the Mayflower itself. That's because the Mayflower was broke up along the shore here to your right. You'll see these blue frame buildings ahead of us here to your right, where it says Charles Hay and Sons Limited. Many years ago, that was a shipyard, and the Mayflower was deconstructed on the foreshore there. But look to the left of that building, you'll see the park with the big tree in the middle. That's Pilgrim's Park. That's where the Mayflower set sail from to go round to Plymouth, to pick up the Pilgrim Fathers. And if you look in between the park and the old shipyard, you'll see a thick brick wall that divides them. Look slightly to the left of that wall, you'll see a very old-fashioned lamppost. And next to it, there's a cast-iron silhouetted figure of the Pilgrim Father and his son. In his son's hand is a book, and in the book are the names of every member of crew that was aboard the Mayflower the day that she set sail from here to go round to Plymouth. Then upon arriving at Plymouth and picking up the Pilgrim Fathers, the Mayflower set sail once more to go across the Atlantic, so everyone on board can start their new lives in the Americas. And for those of you on board who don't know the story of the Mayflower, it is a very true one and a very prevalent one in American history, because the people on board that vessel started one of the first ever colonies in the States. The colonisation of America is an amazing thing to look into. I've been quite sport really, I've been brought up around stories of the Mayflower, but I've actually looked into it properly, and not only is it American history, a lot of it's English history as well. Prior to the Mayflower, you had ships like the Godspeed that made the journey across the Atlantic. And the first ever known colonies to be formed in the States was, of course, the Walter Rileys, and that disappeared off the face of the earth. No one ever found it. It's now remembered as the lost colony of North Carolina. If there's any Americans of all interested in the history, go and visit the Mayflower pub. There's a lot of good things in there, and there's a really nice restaurant in there as well. Talking of pubs, though, over to your left quickly, you'll see the white building. That's the Prospect of Whitby. Named so due to a ship called the Prospect that bore outside of it that was part of the Whitby coal influence. But prior to that, it was known as the Devil's Punch Pub. That's the oldest pub anywhere along the banks of the Thames. There has been a pub on that site for nearly 600 years. The pub in its time is most notoriously known as being one of the infamous press ganging sites, which is basically where the young men of old, if they went in there and got a bit worse for wear, they were dragged to the alleyway at the back of the building, crushed over the back of the head, and then press ganged into the Royal Navy. And no one actually wanted to join the Navy back then if you were dying of scurvy or something much worse. Also to our left, another bit of American history. Look across the tops of the trees, you'll see the spire of another church. This is St Paul's of Shadwell. Now, many years ago, a lady by the name of Jane Randall was baptised in that church. And then some years later, she met a man by the name of Peter Jefferson. They later got married in that church and shortly afterwards immigrated to America. Whilst in America, they had a son, and of course, his name was Thomas. And for those of you on board that don't know, Thomas Jefferson was the third ever president of the United States, and he also wrote the very famous Declaration of Independence. That's where his family's history starts, over there to your left, in Shadwell, East London. But take a look around us now, folks, and you do start to see the real changing face of our grand old River Thames become a lot more evident. All the old working wharves and warehouses that were thriving for trade in the early part of last century have either been knocked down and built upon or just straight out converted into luxury riverside apartments. That's because all the trade's gone from London. The only thing that we really transport up and down the city now is London's rubbish, because it's the most environmentally friendly way to do so. All the old dock entrances now, a lot of them have been closed off. For instance, here to your left, this one's not closed, you still can go in there, but it's not commercial no more, so there's no longer a need for a dockmaster's house over here at Limehouse Marina. That's the old dockmaster's house there to your left. That was converted a few years ago into a gastro pub called The Narrow, which is owned by the famous foul-mouthed celebrity TV chef Gordon Ramsay. And if you're intrigued to know what the difference is between a gastro pub and a normal pub, it's quite simple. It's around an extra £4.50 a pint. But you can go into the marina, as I said, still as a recreational user. You go up through the marina, you can join onto the River Lee. Then, if you successfully navigate the River Lee through Hertfordshire, you can join up onto the Grand Union Canal and navigate as far up the country as places like Birmingham, Liverpool and Manchester. This is the way the goods and cargo was transported up and down the heart of the country many, many years ago, long before the days of trains and Arctic lorries. It was through the UK's inland waterways. The best example of this I can give you, if any of you watch Peaky Blinders, there was an episode where they got in the canals at Birmingham and made their way down to London. Well, again, that's the way goods and cargo was transported up and down the country. A few years ago, it would have taken you about 2.5 weeks to travel from this one here in London, all the way up the country to the Thames Escape opposite Manchester. Nowadays, it will take you significantly longer, as next door to the active 250 yachts there are on the way up to Manchester, next door to every single one of them today is a pub. Trust me, you have a fantastic time. But we're approaching Canary Wharf at this point. The point we're at the Thames here is known as all points and reaches are given names of location. This is bits of interest picking up very through the farmer's way. So after we get, so I'll give your ears a mic or a bit of a rest, and I'll leave you peace and quiet until we can get further down to the bridge. I'll hang up the microphone once, and I'll tell you all about the time of return, folks. So, before I go, folks, just to reiterate my earlier words about the commentary. That's essentially what we're doing.
But yeah, we'll be off the boat at 5:30.
Okay, folks, as you can see, ahead of the seat to your right, we're approaching our next scheduled stop, which is the Royal Borough of Greenwich. Now, just to let you know about the times of returning boats and the services, we are your next boat to return back upriver to Westminster. We'll be leaving here pretty much straight away, so if you do wish to return immediately, stay on board. However, if you want to get off and have a look around, you're very welcome to do so. The boats return back to Westminster every half an hour, on the 10 past and 22 the hour, but your last guaranteed boat returning to Butler's Wharf this afternoon will be at 20 to 6, that's 17:40, and your last boat returning to Westminster this afternoon, and that'll be direct to Westminster, will be at 10 past 6, that's 18 to 10. Please don't miss that boat because it is a very, very long walk back. Believe me, I've done it, it's absolutely bloody marvellous. We're leaving us here if you are. Please ensure you have all your personal belongings. Don't leave anything of value behind to spoil your day. Do take care when stepping from the vessel to the pier. And on behalf of the crew of the Sabine, we hope you've had a pleasant journey and we hope you'll have safe and pleasant remainders of your stay here in London. Thank you.